want to talk to you about Pi, the coding agent, and why I think it's interesting and why I started using it. So I've got the website here over on my other screen. And I know there's heaps of these different tools today, and part of the reason I've settled on this is probably because it's built by a bunch of European people, and they've been quite prominent in the local industry talking about it. Part of the other reason, or like the thing that really drew me to it originally, is that it's abstracted back from the underlying model operators. So you can use Pi and you can swap between ChatGPT or LM Studio or OpenRouter that I know you like to use, as well as Anthropic, which is really useful for me because I find myself in a situation quite often asking the models to critique each other. And it's super trivial to do it with Pi. I think lots of other tools let you do that as well. But the part that I find really interesting is this idea that it's a really minimal coding agent harness. It doesn't have much built in out of the box. It doesn't have, for instance, subagents or elaborate workflow things, but it's very, very extensible. And there's kind of this long history of very interesting software engineering, I think, in this direction, where you build software that's kind of like this minimal malleable core. There's a great article on it from Ink and Switch. I don't know if have you seen these guys before?
No, I have not.
They have all these articles that are like almost verging on the philosophy of building software systems. I think it's really interesting, but this is basically talking about how when you build software, it would be very interesting for everyone using it if you could make it so that it can be bent to the user's will, rather than just being like some binary you get, you're stuck with it. There's stuff like the way Smalltalk Pharaoh works, where you have this programming environment where Smalltalk runs in an IDE and the IDE is written in Smalltalk, and you can manipulate the IDE as you dynamically manipulate your programs running with it. Lisp stuff is kind of coming from the same background. I think this is all really cool and still kind of relatively unexplored. And Pi pushes in that direction. You have kind of like this minimal malleable core of a coding agent. And then you have all of this really well-written documentation for the agent itself, both on the web and then published up through from the installed copy of it. So if you go and poke around at Pi as a developer, or as Pi trying to extend itself, you have all of that same clear markdown written documentation that you get on the website. And you have all of these inbuilt examples that are, again, just available to Pi when it's working on itself locally. So the big idea here with it is that rather than saying, hey, you know, we are Anthropic, we build Claude code, we add new features to it as we go, and they work for most people, you have this thing that's like inherently very changeable, and it has all the context packaged up with it that you can just go and ask Pi to build things for you. So if you want subagents, which is totally reasonable, you can just be like, build subagents. If you want a little status thing in the corner that shows what your subagents are doing, you just say, build this thing. Generally, it works really well. What is interesting to look at? So here we've got kind of my core Pi directory in my home, and this is the global configuration for everything. So we can start out with agents.md, which is kind of the extent of the system prompt that we pass to everything. So here I've got kind of my typical customizations I want for everything. Basically use JJ instead of Git. Here is how I want you to do JJ. Please don't ever do committing operations without me asking you to do that very explicitly, because I really dislike it when coding agents write their big, overly detailed commits, and it's very clear that that's happened without you being involved. I prefer to kind of gatekeep that. So you have that to start with. And then you have all this other stuff in here you can do. So if we jump into extensions, we have things like typed TypeScript extensions that I've got it to build using the extension framework of Pi. And I think the big idea here is that you shouldn't kind of jump in and just be like, rebuild Claude code or rebuild whatever tool you're using. You should use it kind of like as this really minimal thing, and then be like, oh, I have some friction here. Can you fix that? One thing that I think is quite cool that I've got it to build is this token tracker. So my idea here was basically, I have this thing, it consumes all these tokens. I rub subagents, it consumes even more tokens. I have absolutely no idea where those tokens are going or if they're being used effectively or not. So I've got it to build this, and basically it gets all of these different lifecycle hooks. I don't really know where to show you in the code here, but maybe if I scroll down a bit, we can find like an on turn. Yeah, so it has all these different hooks that are run as part of the lifecycle extension mechanism for Pi. And basically what it does is go through those and capture information about the things that are happening. And from that, I have this big subdirectory in here, sessions, where I have the path to different things. Like if I go into there, I end up with all of these different JSON files that capture the whole session and all the details of what's happened there and how many tokens were used and rah, 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 rah. And this is really useful because you can go back and you can say, hey, can you reflect on how you're running? You know, where are you spending your tokens? What's going on? What am I doing? And is it sane or not? Here's one I've prepared earlier because it takes a bit of while for it to churn through all of the different data. But you can go in and you can see, hey, here are all the different tools. Here's how much of the schema I've used. Like here's part of this Datadog wrapper I've built for the Datadog API, for instance. There's some Snowflake stuff in here. It goes on and on and on. It looks a bit better when I haven't zoomed my shell in so aggressively. But at the bottom, you get a whole pile of kind of like reflections on what you should be doing. Like here it's saying I've got this skill called Unsplash. It finds Unsplash images for my blogs for me. I use that everywhere. Maybe I should turn it off. And this was actually immediately useful for me because when I first set it up, I discovered that the way that I have wrapped the Snowflake MCP was jamming like 10%, was accounting for 10% of all of the tokens I was spending in all these sessions where I was never using Snowflake. It just gets appended to the end of the system prompt. It's always there. You always pay the cost. And I was like, okay, then I need to go and build a mechanism that lets me disable MCP servers easily. And I've done that, and it makes everything, you know, a bit less costful, which is cool. I will stop there and ask you what you think.
Yeah, well, you just kind of hit the nail on the head for, I think, a problem a lot of us are experiencing lately is just first, just understanding token usage. A lot of that obviously is related to cost and that kind of thing. But um, I'm seeing some parallels in some of the things I've been playing around with Hermes agent in that it's great for just putting it to task with generic types of stuff, you know, just kind of help making things a little bit like you said, getting rid of some of the friction in a few different places. You know, like for Hermes, I've just got it going and checking my email, you know, my inbox, and just giving me some of the things that I really need to, know about. And when it comes to like you creating a way to shut off MCP easily because it's just sending all this like unnecessary tokens, back to wherever. I feel like all of us now that have been experimenting with MCPs are running into that same thing too. Like I got a notification from IT recently that I had spent a fair amount of money in just 24 hours. And a lot of that was because I had just enabled like 3 MCPs that gave me all kinds of really great information, into our different systems, Datadog included, but at a cost, and kind of an unnecessary cost. So anyway, I think it's kind of nice that we've got some tools coming onto the landscape here, like this one that helps you kind of customize the agent over time, and it just gets to know you and your work and the things that you're working on and the things that are important, and hopefully also help out with things like token caching and just stuff
Yeah.
that's going to eventually be probably baseline features for a lot of stuff, but it's still kind of at the edge right now. Anyway,
Is
yeah, it's
token
really impressive.
caching is token caching not widely supported in other clients? Because I know that Pi supports it. It makes it very clear when you're going to flog the token cache,
Yeah,
but I
that
don't know how widely used it is.
I was just asking somebody that same question. I have not gone through. I feel like I was just in my OpenRouter account this morning, and they've got some metrics and some stuff in there that you can see around token caching. So I'm also curious just to go back and kind of look through some of the different tools that I've been playing with lately and see how and if they are handling token caching, because I think it is a big deal, and something people are going to want to know how to use, enable.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, well, thanks, Scott, for showing us Pi, an early intro into that. This is the first time I've seen it. I know it's popped up on our radar lately. I think the recent Lapdog tool that we just put out has an
Also supports
installation,
it.
yeah, for Pi, and that was kind of the first time for me. I was like, oh, we should go check that out. So appreciate you stepping in and telling us what you know about it, and we'll see you on another episode soon.
No worries. Cheers.
Thanks, Scott.